Hey there everybody, today is Tuesday, June 23rd. Did your EIDL loan get denied? Well, I'm going to show you how to file for reconsideration. But first, I would love it if you would please hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for updates, and also smash that like button to kind of show support, help me out. I would really appreciate it. And also, please comment below, if you have questions about anything, but most importantly, let me know what your favorite quarantine food is. Since you can't really leave the house much to go eating out, let me know what you like cooking. Let me know what you like to get to go. My favorite so far has been steak, potatoes, and mac and cheese. Just been cooking that shit at home like crazy. So let me know in the comments below what your favorite quarantine food is. Love to hear from you. All right. Now there are other videos out here showing you how to do reconsideration. I think that's great. However, just know that this is coming from my own experience as a CPA, doing dozens of these applications for people. I think I know what I'm talking about in terms of applying for reconsideration. I know exactly what lenders are looking for. Since not only have I helped a lot of clients with SBA loans, but I've also helped them with a lot of regular lending, business lending, mortgages, all that stuff. I'm not a mortgage broker, but I know exactly what documents lenders are asking for and what they're looking for and how they're reading financial statements. So with all that knowledge, I'm going to show you how to apply it and use it to apply for reconsideration. So if you got denied from the EIDL loan, there's been several reasons that are more common than others. The first one being your Experian credit score was low or was not sufficient or didn't have sufficient information. The next reason would be that the SBA did not see any economic injury. And what this could usually mean is that maybe you didn't have enough revenue or gross profit in order to show that you needed the money, or maybe you didn't have any activity during the year, or typically what this means is if your loan amount was going to be less than $1,000, I think that's based on the generic calculation, if your loan amount's gonna be less than $1,000, then you basically got denied for lack of economic injury. The last reason is that the SBA was unable to verify your identity. Now this one is the easiest to solve. You just go on their email that they sent you, re-enter in all your information and hit submit, and hopefully they just put you back in through the process, okay? So I'm gonna be talking about filing a reconsideration given the first two reasons or for any other reasons that you might have received. Basically, the economic injury disaster loan was meant to be obviously for economic injury disaster, and it was supposed to be a pretty long process. The streamlined application you see online right now, the 15 minutes or whatever, that's really short application. And obviously it doesn't take that much information down. So the SBA is going off of very little information when they're making a decision on your loan. And they're doing that because they got over 5 million applicants. They got to get through all that stuff, okay? But the actual normal economic injury disaster loan for normal disasters is a very long process. You have the application form, which is SBA Form 5. And then there's all these other forms that you have to fill out. And I'll go through them. And I think that filling out these forms, submitting them along with other documentation to the SBA will give you the best chance of getting approved. Because right now, all they have to go off of is your credit score and your revenue and your cost of goods sold. And these documents, I found them right off the SBA website. They're available in my online program, but I'm sure you can find them on Google if I just tell you the form numbers and stuff. So here we go. The first one is SBA Form 2202, Schedule of Liabilities. This form just has you list all your personal liabilities, like mortgage, credit card debt, car debt, any of that stuff. This is part of your personal financial statement, okay? This form helps the SBA, and all these forms actually help the SBA make sure that you are able to pay back the loan if necessary. So Form 2202, Schedule of Liabilities, I would definitely include that in the package. And that form kind of piggies off of the Form 413, SBA Form 413. It's a personal financial statement, okay? This form needs to be completed for all owners of the company that own more than 20% of the shares or interest. This personal financial statement basically lists your personal assets, your personal liability, and it breaks down to your net worth. So you have cash, investments, a house, cars, any of that stuff, other assets, like if you have valuable memorabilia or whatever, you will list that in the personal assets section, okay? And then liabilities, you have car loan, mortgage, student loans, any of that stuff, you will list in the liability section. And this should match with the form that I just talked about, the 2202. The liability section should match. And then the last part of this form is your net worth, which is basically just your assets minus liabilities. That gives you your net worth. And then below, on page 2 of the form, 2 and 3, I think, it asks you to identify those assets. Like if you have like other assets listed, it's going to ask you to put in like what they are. You got to list them out: vehicles, memorabilia, whatever. And the same with any mortgages, you got to list out if you have multiple properties and all that stuff. Personal financial statement, really important. It will showcase that you will be able to pay back the loan even if your credit score sucks. And that's the whole point of all these documents for the regular economic injury disaster application. Then there's form SBA 1368, additional filing requirements. This form has 2 parts to it. The first part asks for monthly sales figures for the last 3 to 4 years, okay? Monthly sales for the last 3 to 4 years. And the second part basically asks you to forecast your financial statement, your income statement, over the span of the disaster. So I made a video before about forecasting and how important it is. This form right here asks for your forecast. And I believe the purpose of this form is to really show that you have economic injury. If you list your prior year's monthly sales figures and then you forecast like a really crappy year, that right there, even though it's self-certification, that right there shows the economic injury impact of the crisis. And the last form that you want to include is form 4506T. Now this is actually an IRS form. 4506T is basically a request for your tax return transcript. You're going to want to supply this as an individual and as a business. So you have at least 2. If you have more owners that own over 20% of the business, you're going to need a 4506T for each of those owners. So you can send tax returns, and you should send tax returns. I'll go over that in a second. But this is a way for SBA or any other lender to verify that the tax return that you submitted matches the one that you actually filed with the IRS, because you can obviously just draft up any tax return and just give it to them. So they want to make sure the 2 match, okay? So this is just a verification of your income, of the way that you file taxes, and basically of your character. You're not making shit up and just submitting it to the SBA. All right, so those are the main forms that are actually required for filing the economic injury disaster loan application in normal circumstances, okay? So already, the reconsideration is a much more involved process than the actual loan application. This is part of the reason why I think they capped it at $150,000, because could you imagine lending out $2 million with just a credit score and a self-certified revenue and cost of goods sold? Yeah, I don't think that's happening. So all these documents, I think, is going to greatly help, because you're trying to provide the SBA with new information that they don't have, and it's going to be reviewed by a new loan officer, okay? So after you complete those forms, these are some other things that you need to submit. You need to submit 3 years of financial statements. So you need 17, 18, 19, and I would do year-to-date 2020, broken out by month. Make sure it matches your monthly sales figures that you submitted in that other form, the additional filing requirements. Next thing, 3 years of tax returns, personal and business. Obviously, if you file your business return on the Schedule C, then just 3 years of personal returns. Obviously, if your business hasn't been in business that long, then just submit as far back as you've been in business. And lastly, submit your Experian credit report. And if you have any explanations or dispute notes or whatever, make sure you note those explanations and disputes within the credit reports. Obviously, they have this information already. They have the credit report, but if you can make notes or itemize any discrepancies that you see, it'll be super helpful to submit to the SBA agent. Now, the last piece I'm going to talk about is the letter. The letter is not as important. Okay, it's just a letter asking for a reconsideration. The data, the proof is in the numbers that you submit. All the shit that I just went through with you just now, that's the bulk of the importance right there. The letter, it can be a simple letter, and I think there are key things that you need in the letter, which I'll go over. But the letter is not that important. I mean, that's why I didn't create a template, because it's just basically stating who you are and why you're asking for a reconsideration. Okay, so some key things that you need on the letter. Obviously, the application number, your SBA application number. You need that for them to be able to find you, your business, or your application. Next thing is your business name and EIN and address. I mean, obviously you want to have that just in case they can't find you with your app number. You have at least your EIN that you use to submit the application. The next thing you want in your letter is the amount that you're requesting. Okay. Now, this is important because then they might just come back with like, oh, we approve you for $2,000. Well, when you're looking for like $200,000. So how does the SBA calculate loan amounts? Let's remove the $150,000 cap, that bullshit cap that they impose for a second. How do they actually calculate the loan amount? They just take revenue minus cost of goods sold, that's called your gross profit, times 50%. That's exactly how they calculate the loan amount. I've heard talks about 6 months of expenses and yada, yada, yada. I don't think that's true because, they're not asking for that. They've been really focused on revenue and cost of goods sold, which means your gross profit, 50%. I've seen it on documents on their website before, but their website has changed so much, I can't seem to find them now. But that's how the loan is calculated. So for the amount requested, I would put at least that much. You take your revenue for the year for 2019, and you take your cost of goods sold for 2019, or for as recently as you've been in business, whatever works best for you. Take that amount for at most a year's period of time, and then divide it by 2. You want 50% of your gross profit. That would be your loan amount that you're requesting. So the last thing you have to do is submit it. You submit by fax, or you can submit by email or by mailing it in. And I would suggest either fax it or email it. Don't mail it. That shit's gonna take forever. I'll put the email and the fax number in the description below, so you have that. But it should be in your decline letter if you got one of those. Okay. Tomorrow, I think I'll do a reconsideration video for people who want to request a greater loan amounts than the one that they got. Like if you got, especially if you were capped at 150,000, I'm going to do a video on how to request more, since that is, in my opinion, a bullshit cap. So another thing to consider is that you have 6 months from the time that you were declined to submit this reconsideration. I would not wait that long at all, since there's limited funding. Do this as soon as possible and submit it electronically. Okay? That's all I got for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Again, if you're new here, smash that subscribe button. And if you haven't done so already, take a second, smash that like button. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care for now.